in that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for those that escape of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remains in Jerusalem shall be called holy, even everyone that is counted among the living in Jerusalem.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing the book of Isaiah. Alright, 1 second here. So a little video issue. I'm going to correct that by just rebooting the camera. That seems to work. Okay. Close enough. Well, not particularly close. Oh well. That's right, we're here to listen, not to look. Okay, alright. Isaiah 4. Oh no, we're not in Isaiah 4. We got the last couple of verses of 3. 3 and 4 kind of belong in the same chapter, if you ask me, and you'll see why. So we have, it's important to cover these verses, well, since we didn't cover them, but they definitely carry the thought from the one chapter into the next. This chapter being only 6 verses. Not only is it short, it's just connected without. I mean, you shouldn't put a chapter division here. I mean, because they're inextricably linked. It's not like a new subject has taken place. Sometimes when it says "in that day," you're starting a new thought. Like on a particular subject. Like there might be several chapters in a row where it says in that day. I mean, but there could be conceivably. There's like chapters where it's like the burden of Nineveh, the burden of Babylon, the burden of this place. And they all kind of initiate each little section, and it makes sense to put a chapter there. Remember, chapters are not part of the, the original Bible. It's something that was added later, chapters and verses. And my computer's making a lot of noise again. I don't know why it picks this. It does this whenever maybe it's the streaming video. It's just making my video card work. Alright. So, thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she being desolate shall sit upon the ground. Referring now, let's start off saying, behold, the Lord of hosts doth take away from Jerusalem and Judah the staff and the stay, the bread and wine, or the bread and the water, and all the people you would expect to rely on, the government and religious leaders, the intelligent people in society. They are no help. They can't deliver anyone, and they are themselves, What was it said about the craftsmen specifically? It said, yeah. The idea is that like as he took away the bread and water, he would also take away the captain of 50, the honorable, the counselor, the cunning artificer, the eloquent orator. People who you would expect to be perhaps useful in such a dire situation as the city's under attack by a foreign nation. You'd look to your leaders, to the elders, to the people who've been in charge during peacetime, and hope that they would have a plan to deliver the nation, but they don't. And the wisdom is taken away from them. They ever had to begin with. And sometimes you want wisdom and you can't buy it. You can't get it. Because God hides it from people. Sometimes the wisdom is hidden. So it's important to be close with God, because in Him is all the treasures of hidden wisdom and knowledge that man needs. People are often obsessed with getting knowledge about the world that is mostly just sensational. Like, it's the kind of thing that belongs on the cover of a tabloid. Angels made with women, it's tabloid biblical perspective. They want some, secrets mostly because they're sensational or they're outrageous, But obviously we shouldn't be seeking that. We should be seeking secrets that are useful and comely. Comely meaning beautiful. That's good enough. That'll do for a definition of comely. Thy men. So this whole chapter has been directed at the city. And the city of Jerusalem, like many things, is likened to it is feminized. The city is a she. Right? And so it's, also there are, of course, women in the city. And the reason I think a city is likened to women, because the reason a city is a she, there are a lot of things that are she's, and there's no rhyme or reason really to it. Like, why are cars and boats she to people? So for me, I don't, I don't know, when I call them, if I'm pounding my car and calling it "you bastard," does that count as female or male? I usually think of them as gender neutral myself. But anyways, in the Bible, the city of Jerusalem is sometimes in symbolic language and in prophecy referred to as feminine. And that's this overarching theme that goes throughout the entire scripture, for the most part. So in Revelation, you can read about the bride, the Lamb's wife, and New Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven, adorned as a bride, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And that's in chapter 21 of Revelation. So, and also she has a counterpart, which is the whorish city, which is Mystery Babylon, the great whore. But also, in the Old Testament prophets, Israel was, and Jerusalem was called a whore, because the idea was that the city and its people were, in a sense, married to God, and they were supposed to be loyal to Him. But then they went and they followed other gods, and God called that the equivalent of adultery. In a spiritual sense, they committed whoredoms under every green tree and also the fact that fornication was also sometimes an integral part of these idolatrous religions, which explains to a great degree their appeal. It's like, if your religious choices is like, okay, now this is the part where we cut off the tip of your, your genitals. You're going to get circumcised. It's like, but at the other place, they have a part where they have sex. So, that's an appeal to the lowest common denominator of human, to bring something base and carnal into religion is a good way to get people, profane and vain people involved in religion. But is it really a good idea? Of course not. And again, her gates here, this is very poetic, symbolic language. Her gates lament and mourn. That's not literally true. See, the Bible isn't always this is a clear example of symbolic language. And you may have remembered, it's called personification, where something that is an inanimate object, like a gate or a city, is likened to a human, and it becomes personified. It becomes like a person. This is a typical device. It's not dishonest. It's not untrue. It's not, some people who have this literalist, fundamentalist mind, like, they want everything to be literal. It's like, I think I'm sorry, I'm mumbling. They want everything to be literal, but they can't possibly be reading their whole Bibles. Because there's no way you can read your whole Bible and tell yourself everything is literal. And that, of course, there's a lot of people who consider themselves fundamentalists who do understand that. But I've gotten into arguments with people where they're like, it should be interpreted literally with no specifics. They're just saying the Bible should be interpreted literally. It should. Without qualification, you don't want to Maybe put a, because if you're going to have a standard or make a statement like that, you need to have reason to back it up. Otherwise, why should anyone listen to that? In that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our shame, our reproach or shame. And that goes back to this. See, the city was going to be under siege, and the men would fall by the sword, and the mighty in the war. And her gates would lament and mourn, and she, being desolate, being forsaken, would sit on the ground, the city. And the reason the cities, I think, are probably likened to female is because when you're defending the city, that's what you're defending is women and children. You're defending her. You know what I mean? What makes the city, like I told my wife, if I didn't have her at home, this would be a house and not a home, because I don't know if I'd ever be at home without my wife. Now, maybe whatever, but it's like I'm married. So to me, that's my life. And so there's a sense in which, the city is a woman because that's where the women are kept. That's where they're being protected. That's what you're trying to protect. You're not trying to protect stone walls. If that was it, you just up and leave. But there's things you're trying to protect. Obviously, you want to have autonomy. Your freedom is one thing they're protecting from the Assyrians, and they're also protecting their families. I hope that's not... Well, that's not too loud as far as when I listen to the basement. Well, that's pretty loud, actually. That's not negative 35 decibels. It's still pretty loud. I wish it would stop. We'll see about replacing that. I hate that. Okay, so in the war that would happen, they would lose their men. And so it's saying, in that day, 7 women would take hold of one man. A lot of people don't understand this passage, but it's pretty easy to understand if you understand war. And also the last thing, let us be called by name to take away our shame. When I was young, I didn't understand this. But it's because there was a war and the women were all raped. That's what happened in the old days. If they weren't taken away captive, they were raped. And so, because you got all the captives, anyone left behind, the women left behind, and it's saying there's going to be a lot more women left behind than men because they don't have as much use for the women as far as slaves. But the men are going to be killed and carried away captive, and the women too. But if you look at the captivity, it's like you're taking slave labor, and the men are just more useful. And they often take women captive too, and they take them for slaves, but for household slaves and for wives. What it's saying is there would be a significant amount of people left over. Even if they are captives, there's just going to be a 7-to-1 ratio of men to women left over, which is terrible. I mean, considering not just killed, but captive, taken captive. Very depopulated of the men. Because once you take all the men away, that population, that territory becomes very easily governable. Because it's not likely the ladies are all going to, while they're struggling to survive and raise their children without their men anymore, the likelihood that they're able to rebel against the Assyrians is extremely small. They're not going to rebel. Not a chance. So they just leave the women sometimes, I guess. That's what it indicates to me. So the idea is that these women have been raped, and they're taking hold of a man and saying, listen, we'll feed ourselves, we'll clothe ourselves, just let us be called by your name. Be our husband, but you don't have to pay us money, you don't have to feed us, we just want you to marry us, we don't expect anything from you. Just let us be called by your name to take away our reproach, our shame. Give our children legitimacy. Because you can say, like, well, why should they be ashamed, right? Our modern sensibilities say they're victims. They don't have to be ashamed. And that's true. They don't have to, victims don't have to be ashamed, but still, people are. Whether you're a victim or not, you feel embarrassed and shameful. Like, honestly, if I was walking down the street and somebody cold cocked me and then beat me up and, blindsided me and got me unaware, I would still feel embarrassed about it. I would feel like I should have seen it coming. I should have, I could have spun. I felt him there. I would have felt like there was something I could have done. Something. And the same thing with the pregnancy. It's like, the war's over and it's months later and a lot of the girls are pregnant. You're walking around, they're all pregnant, and everybody knows. And nobody's particularly happy about it. Usually expecting children is a time of excitement. Right? And so there's some shame there. People, they're ashamed. Nobody wants to look at it. Nobody, little Johnny was in love with her before, but now, she's pregnant with the baby of some Assyrian soldier that no one's ever going to see again. And it shall come to pass. Oh, I'm sorry. So that's has to do with that. So you say, the problem is you look at like, well, not problem, but here's the thing: you're gonna want to be interested. It's like, well, okay, Paul, that's it sounds like a sound interpretation. But what's the applicability to end times prophecy? And that's a question: how much applicability of any prophecy is there to end time prophecy? And I always think that there is going to be some applicability, because the patterns that are repeating, such as the Assyrian, we know to be a pattern that is that will be repeated in Antichrist, because the number of passages in the Old Testament about the Assyrian that were quite obviously being referred to or inspiring or informing the New Testament. It's like I said to a friend one time, someone who had studied with me and was a very intelligent young man, but he had been reading some material by someone about how they thought that, what was it? That I had in my brain and I forgot it. I'll bring it back in a second. He brought me another question about something else, which was the authorship of Hebrews, and then but there was something about prophecy. Oh, it was Ezekiel 28. A lament for the king of Tyre. Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyre, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, thou the finished pattern, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. Every precious stone was thy covering. The sardius, the topaz, the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, the sapphire, etc., etc. The workmanship of thy drums and thy pipes was prepared in thee from the day thou wast created. All right, prepared in thee in the day that thou wast created. Thou the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Now, and also there's what was another passage? I'm trying to think of one that'll work for. What's another one? That's Ezekiel 28. Was Ezekiel 31? Which part of Ezekiel 31? But anyways, in Ezekiel 28 we have a passage. It's called the Lament for the King of Tyre. And but the question was brought to me well, why shouldn't we just interpret this as being about the king of Tyre and nothing else? What business do we have going back into the Old Testament saying this applies to Revelation? Like how do we dare? Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like, how do you know that? Well, it's pretty simple. Because the New Testament, because the way the apostles used Old Testament prophecy in the New Testament, or the way certain themes in the New Testament. For example, in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, it talks about, it says, that day, the day of Christ's return will not come until there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, making a show of himself that he is God. And, you look at that passage, it's like, well, where was Paul drawing this from? Like, did he make that up? You know what I mean? I mean, maybe he did. He could have gotten it by pure revelation from God, like God revealed this to him, right? God revealed to him that passage about, and that passage is definitely about Antichrist. It's about the man of sin, the son of perdition. Who this guy has to come first. So he is the Antichrist, and he must come first. And so that is the thing. But where does this idea come from? Well, you can find very similar passages like Isaiah. Now you look at Isaiah chapter 14. We'll get to that eventually. But it's the doom of Babylon. Oh, it's a doom of Babylon. And it's talking about the king of Babylon, the lament on the king of Babylon. Take up a lamentation upon the king of Babylon, it says. Thus saith the Lord God, thou art the finished pattern. Wait, no, that's Ezekiel 20. I'm confusing my passages. But anyways, it's the passage in Isaiah in chapter 14 where it says, Lucifer, son of the morning. Everyone assumes that's Satan. That was another one who was saying, it's like, that's just talking about the king of Babylon. Maybe that's what it means. Maybe it's just all about the king of Babylon. The king of Babylon has this light giver personality. And the resemblance, the way you could look at that passage and interpret it of an angel, he was saying is maybe inappropriate. And if it existed in a vacuum, I'd say he was right. And that's what I told him. Like, well, taken by itself, I see your point. Contextually, it says the king of Babylon. It doesn't seem to have any reference to Satan. But then I was like, but where did Paul get the idea? Did he just he wasn't drawing on the Old Testament? And he was making something completely new and different up, and that the Old Testament passage had no relation? Even though, if you read Isaiah 14, the desire to exalt himself above all that is called God, so that he is God, sits in the temple of God, that he is God, it's right there. It's a little differently worded, but the idea is there. It says in this, beautiful, that he would, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That term sides of the north specifically refers to a part of the mountain that Jerusalem is built on, the sides of the north. And that specifically means he wants to ascend to the mountain of God. That's just like in 2 Thessalonians. So that's the justification. It's the fact that the New Testament authors showed us what was an acceptable interpretation. And so this definitely, I think, has some impact on Revelation, though it's not clear. Meaning that this historic event, this kind of event, is a type. Now, when you think of it, as the enemy came through and raped his way through, you understand, it says, I will discover your secret parts. I will show your skirts upon your face. That's an analogy for basically, when a woman's skirts are on her face, it's because she's exposing her genitals, obviously. And the implication is intercourse. I will lift thy skirts up and all that. There's passages that use that kind of language. But in the book of Revelation, the idea is basically that these men came through and they were raped. In fact, chapter 13, the Doom of Babylon also talks about them coming through and raping. It's not, their houses shall be spoiled and their wives raped. That's what it says at one of the last verses in Isaiah 13. Not the last, but one of the last. Their houses shall be spoiled and their wives raped. That's what happened in war. And so what about Revelation? Well, the great whore in Revelation, she says, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. She sits there, and the reason she's a great whore is because she represents apostasy, and she was supposed to be waiting faithfully for Christ, her husband, her betrothed, in that symbolic sense, betrothed husband, and he tarries a bit, and the Antichrist shows up, and she takes him for a husband. But there's also a sense in which we know this is through deceit. So she doesn't know that's not her husband. She thinks it is. So in a sense, if someone is fooled like that, that's technically rape. I mean, like if twin brothers, if one of them's married, and the other twin has sex with the other brother's wife, that's rape. Even if she thinks that's her husband, that's rape. That's rape. So there's a sense in which you could look at Revelation and the mystery Babylon as being, she's a whore, but she's also somewhat a victim here. No, I'm not saying that to get her off the hook. The deceit is part of her punishment. I mean, there's a reason she's deceived. She's not just deceived in her innocence. She's deceived in her corruption. There's a difference. You know what I mean? I remember, some people, there are scammers who specialize in scamming scammers. And, people feel less, when you watch someone scam a scammer, you don't feel very sympathetic. Because they do it to innocent people. That's what I'm saying. When you scam a scammer, people applaud. When you scam an innocent person, they want to put you in jail. People don't like because that could be them. They could be innocently scammed. So Mystery Babylon, she is raped, but it's not in her innocence. It's not like some twin brother. She is in her corruption. Now, she's may innocently think it's the Lord, but she's not innocent herself, is what I'm saying. Not in her innocence, meaning it's though she may not know, she may be innocent of knowing that this is Satan. What got her to that point was not innocence. It was corruption. I mean, her corruption prior to Antichrist appearing is what led to her fall. So she is deceived through her corruption and her evil, not through just being an innocent little girl who doesn't know anything about what happens when armies come marching through. So that's the idea of 7 women. It means the women were outnumber the men 7-1. Revelation also, again, the idea of 7 means perfection. Also, it's like all the women. It doesn't necessarily mean literally all the women, but it means it's like a big thing. 7 is a number of spiritual perfection. It's like the whole society turned upside down and inside out. And so the 7 women in Revelation, it makes me think of the 7 churches. You know what I mean? And of course, the one man being Christ. Right? Everyone wants to take hold of Christ and let him be called by their name. But, if instead you sat around and said, I sit a queen and am no widow, chances are he's not going to take that one to his bride. He's going to take the one to bride that has been faithful. We have the 10 virgins in 10 virgins, 5 wise, 5 foolish, but we also have the 7 churches. And the church also is, and also the thing is, bring it full circle. The church also is the many member body of Christ, right? Like a city, it is in fact a city. In fact, the church is Jerusalem. It is heavenly Jerusalem, the real church. So, in a sense, we bring around full circle. Jerusalem was the subject of chapter 3. And now, these 7 women also symbolize the city in her desolation, in her violated state, trying to rebuild what's left of her reputation, looking to maybe go back to Christ. So at the end, when Mystery Babylon, is burned with fire and all that, they're going to be hoping they can return. It reminds me of the scene in Matthew 7 when Jesus says, "Many will say to me, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? In thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name have done many wonderful works." And he's going to say to them, "Look, I never knew you. Get away from me, you who work iniquity." And that's the image we have of these women. They're coming, they're saying, "Oh, your name, let us have your name. Oh, let your name of Jesus be on us, so we be not reproached." Well, much like the gentleman at the close in the previous chapter, I will not be a healer. I don't have anything for you. It's interesting, and now look at full circle. They bring around, like I said, the city, the 7 women represent the whole city, in a sense of like what's left. And also the 7 churches represent Holy Jerusalem. Well, 5 wise. No, I'm sorry. The 7 churches, 5 with which God was not pleased. At the end of the churches, the last time you hear from the churches in chapter 11, people don't know you hear from the churches in chapter 11. They think the church disappears after chapter 3. Not so. The word church never occurs in Revelation, but that it doesn't have to, because the symbolic equivalent of church is candlestick. We learned that in chapter 1 of Revelation, the last verse. The 7 churches are the 7 candlesticks. And it's notable that between chapters 2 and 3, only 2 of the churches did Christ find no fault with, but the other 5 he threatened with taking their candlestick out of their place. And then by chapter 11, when we find the 2 witnesses, we are told they are the 2 candlesticks, which lets us know that the 2 witnesses are actually the 2 faithful churches. And you shouldn't look for Moses and Elijah to appear, because they won't. It's going to be up to you. It's going to be up to us. It's not going to be up to Moses and Elijah. God ain't sending reinforcements from the past. Don't be so delusional. And he ain't going to send Billy Graham or anybody else either. And our modern preachers are going to let us down. They're all going to go over to Satan. I pretty much guarantee it. But I've also thought, I'm like, well, you know what? Wouldn't it be just like the Lord to take like the worst TV preacher, the one that I despise the most, and make him into his, like Kenneth Copeland or Pat Robertson or Benny Hinn. I always say, like, these guys, and it's not likely. God's more often, he does occasionally take somebody from that position. The Apostle Paul would qualify as that type of a person, right? Taken from the ranks of the enemies. God does that. He takes from his enemies. He takes enemies and makes them his servants. That's power. I mean, you can just take an enemy and like, now you serve me. God does that. God is powerful like that. And so Paul was an enemy, and there are enemies, and wouldn't it be something if God took one of the worst enemies, and turned him into, oh, look at Robert Tilton, he's God's prophet. I'm just saying that can happen. God doesn't need to take me for a prophet. He could take anybody he wants. He can make the stones speak. So, he can manage with me, and he can manage with somebody else. The Lord will get by. His plan's going to work out. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for them that are escaped of Israel. Excuse me, hiccup. So, there we are. We are Christ, the husband, the man. Why would it be? It's interesting that it's inserted right here. Now, you could look at it purely as a historical thing. Well, but once you get to the branch is known to be a messianic reference. Like, in the time of Jesus, when they saw the branch, they knew what it was talking about, something special. Now, a lot of times, like, if you ask a Jewish person who is a zealous, well-studied in the scriptures Jewish person about, like, something like Isaiah 53, you say, like, what about Isaiah 53? He was wounded for our transgressions, bruised for our iniquities. Look at this. You read this, and it sounds just like Jesus. They say, well, yeah, we can see that. But also, we think it sounds just like Jacob. Jacob has suffered much, meaning Israel collectively. They look at themselves as a suffering servant of God, by whose stripes we are healed, which is pretty, that's revisionist, because it used to be considered messianic. Now it's considered just us. So that's what the rabbis are up to. We have the husband, the one to whom the wife is supposed to be betrothed in the Revelation sense. And he is beautiful and glorious. And of course, people are trying to stick to him. People are trying to glom onto him. They want to be around. They want to be part of it. Like when Peter and Andrew, John and James. When John and James approached the Lord with their mother, and she asked him if he would grant that her sons could sit on his right hand and his left. They wanted to be. They're like, he's the Lord. I want to be in. Nothing wrong with that. I want, the purpose of serving God is to be in with God. Now, some people serve God to be in with people, meaning to use that service as a way to enrich themselves. And to enrich themselves not only in the sense of money, but also power, because there's a lot of influence that comes with teaching the Bible. I influence people, not a ton, but dozens of people listen to these studies. And it has some impact, obviously. Dozens wouldn't listen if it didn't do something or have some benefit, right? But that doesn't, The thing is, we want to get a benefit from our teachers, right? Not a deficit. We go and we're missing things. That's what the problem is with a lot of teachers. They're missing things. But they're so influential. And they will, and they'll fill in they have to preach something, so they preach things that please people. But the things that we should preach exalt and magnify the Lord. The Lord Jesus should be magnified. The Lord Jesus should be at the center of our preaching. He is the branch. What does the branch mean? Well, it's the idea of like the thing on which everything else is built. The trunk is God, of course, but the branch, and also it represents the house of David. Actually, the branch would be, it's the root. It's the root of Jesse. It refers to the line of David, right? That means because his family line is likened to a tree. It's like a tree. A great house is like a tree. Now, it has roots going backwards, that's spread out, right? Like I am an individual. I am like a tree trunk. I mean, just, every individual is like this in a sense. You have a past, you have ancestors, like roots and branches going out to the future, which have not yet been manifest, but the tree grows like a family. And so, the idea it'll come up. This is the first time we have the branch mentioned. We don't know what he's talking about. Isaiah is making a promise of this branch. But later he talks about this branch growing out of the root of David, out of the stem of Jesse, out of what was this like a tree stump that has been cut down. See, the reason Jesus is the branch and it's the root of David, and the branch comes out of the root, is because the house of David, it survives the Assyrian invasion, but it won't survive the Babylonian. The house of David ceases to be a father-to-son monarchy after, what is it? Who's the last king? I'm getting confused with Israel. Well, Jeroboam 2 was one of the last ones. Who was the very last one? Zedekiah? Or Jeconiah? He has several names. The problem with Zedekiah is, that's why I get confused, because they give him other names in prophecy because he's such a bad king. The last king of Judah was Zedekiah. And I'm not going to look it up. Maybe you can. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. Not Zedekiah. All right, so Zedekiah. With him, the line of David didn't fail. There were still descendants of David, but there was no father-to-son kingdom anymore in Israel. And Jesus represents the branch. Like, it said a branch would grow. Well, it comes later. It says a branch will grow out of his roots, not out of the top of the tree. Jesus did not descend from all the kings of Judah. In fact, well, he does through Joseph, but through Mary, he is related to the kings of Judah. But actually, through one of David's other sons. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Wait. One of Solomon's other sons, I believe. Or was it David's other sons? I could look it up. You can look up Jesus' genealogy. I'm not going to look it up now. But he is descended from David through his mother's side, but not through the Zedekiah. Not through Zedekiah. Let's just put it that way. I mean, the last king of Israel last king of Judah was not a ancestor of Jesus on his mother's side. And it depends on how you look at the genealogies of Jesus, because there are two given, and they're very different. So obviously, they represent different things, or they should represent different things. And what many people have suggested was that the one in Luke represents the genealogy of Mary, and the one in Matthew represents the genealogy of Joseph. But the genealogy in Matthew is there's a lot of gaps in it, and is significantly, it's given in this precise 14 generations thing. There's 14 generations. He only counts the most notable ancestors. He skips ancestors all the time. That's why I say you can't trust genealogies, because you don't understand how they were made. I mean, we assume, they're perfect because they're in the Bible. It's God's word. It's perfect. But internally, we can prove they're not perfect. I mean, I don't have to go outside the Bible to prove the genealogies are not right, and not meaning not what you think they are. That's why I say it's not that they're not right. They're fine. The genealogies are fine. It's us that's wrong. It's us that gets the wrong idea and tries to use them for things that they aren't. You know what I mean? Genealogies are perfectly fine. But people are the problem because they'll take these things and run with them. So we have the city, they're taking hold of man, then we have the branch of the Lord. That's the man everyone really wants. That's the one we're all really looking for, the true Lord from heaven. And also, he is closely connected here to Jerusalem because when he returns, he will return to Jerusalem. And notice the timeline here. It's like we have the city, there's going to be this siege, this great tribulation, and then afterwards, we have the branch. The women are left pregnant, they're taking hold of one man, and the branch appears. It is very much an image of the return of Christ. Now, when they take hold of one man, they don't show you what he's going to say to them, like, I never knew you, and maybe take one or two of them, I know you two. You two are my faithful servants in the tribulation. So, yes, you will be called by my name, but you're not even pregnant. All symbology, right? Because the pregnancy represents, in the book of Revelation, the pregnancy represents being deceived by Antichrist and being seduced into his, into worshiping him, basically. Since that is the sexual analogy. That the worship of Antichrist is like sex. And meaning that makes it like adultery in a symbolic sense. So, and that says, everyone that is left in Zion. Well, and also the fruit of the earth should be excellent and calm. Meaning that the earth would have a response. And this is also alluded to other places that, when the Lord returns, the earth is going to have recovery. And there's going to be a environmental restoration to the earth. The ways in which it is destroyed and corrupted is going to be healed at the coming of the Lord. That should please environmentalists. But it's true. And the earth would bring forth abundantly. And we would not, it says a lot of things, like they're not going to fill the earth with cities anymore and all this stuff. And the fruit is going to be excellent and comely. The earth is going to bring forth abundantly again. That's the idea. The earth is going to bring forth abundantly. We're going to have good times again when the Lord returns. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remains in Jerusalem, again, a lot of things are doubled in these two chapters, right? He that is left in Zion. Let me say it another way. He that remains in Jerusalem, shall be called holy. Even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. Obviously, holy means what they're going to be accounted as separate. And this is one of the reasons why this verse, I do take these serious as millennial passages, or as far as they provide me with some sort of basis on which to make statements about the millennial reign of Christ. And this is one of the places where I say, see here, this leads me to suspect, I'm not saying this authoritatively, but it is certainly my opinion that what the millennium represents is that Jesus will return. He will fight the battle of Armageddon and kill a great number of people. He will raise the faithful dead, and we which are alive and remain to the coming of the Lord and are also the faithful. We will be changed like the raised dead, and we will all be of one resurrected type, meaning we will be like the Lord. And so shall we ever be with the Lord. But then we will go about setting up a kingdom. But what is this kingdom over? Well, when Jesus comes, he's not killing everybody. And he's not changing everybody either. He is only changing we which are alive and remain, who are his followers, the Christians. The Christians will be changed. And they will inherit new bodies. But the rest of the people will not be changed. But Jesus isn't killing everybody. So there's this thing, we have leftover people that are not going to be killed. Also, the day of judgment for everybody. Jesus is judging things when he comes back, right? But he's not judging everyone on an individual basis. He's judging the church. He's judging the leadership. He's judging the world. And there are a lot of individuals that are getting judged, and they're being put to death at his return. But there are people who, it could be women and children or old people, people who are not particularly involved, or maybe not particularly, there's a lot of room, like it says, I was hungry and you gave me eat. You gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. And then he said, when do we do this to you? He says, whenever you did it to the least of these, my brethren. That's us. And there are people who in the tribulation who will, I already see it. I already know exactly how this is going to go. You know why? I just lived it. I just lived what it's going to be like for the mark of the beast in some degree. It's going to be worse, but it's similar. I just lived it. So what happened? How did it happen? Well, I went to the store. I wasn't wearing a mask. And some people weren't happy with me, but other people, secretly, quietly, were very happy with me. They like seeing somebody defying things. They like seeing somebody not going to obey. So I'm walking around with no mask, with my mask down, because like I said, I don't want to be bothered saying, where's your mask? I want to let them know. I know I'm supposed to be wearing a mask, but I'm wearing it improperly. Meaning around my neck. So I don't call that wearing a mask. It's wearing a scarf. But if someone says anything to me, they say, well, sir, do you have a mask? I go, I got one right here. I put it on my face, and then as soon as and then I let it go. They have to insist that I wear it. It's always funny when you see that person who asks you to put the mask on. You see them the second time in the store, and you're not wearing it. And I'm too ashamed to put the mask on a second time without being asked. You know what I mean? So I don't put it on. I just smile. And they don't ask me to put it on a second time, but they look annoyed. Because it's like, because how many times do they want to ask? They want to keep at it? Do you want to keep, we can play this game all day. I'm going to keep taking it off. I'm going to keep being bad. All right. What's that got to do with the mark of the beast? Well, everyone's going to be wearing the mark of the beast, but some people are going to be very reluctant about it. Some people are going to be like, because it's not like they're all going to be like, oh, give us the mark of the beast. Some people are just like with the vaccines and with the masks. Some people are like, oh, I want a mask. Put a mask on. And they're going to be the first ones out the gate. Oh, give me the vaccine right now. Give me a mask right now. Give me the mark of the beast right now. That's what they're going to be like. But other people are going to be like, I don't know if I want a mark of the beast, but I guess if I have to, they're going to allow themselves to be, that's what's going to, And it says a lot of bad things about if you take the mark of the beast. It's, my only thought is that maybe either one, that there is some sort of leeway there. The scriptures, whoever takes the mark of the beast is pretty much done. At least that's the way it sounds in Revelation. So, maybe not. But again, there may be other people who maybe resist or slowly avoid taking it. I don't know. But my point is there will be people, like they say, whoever takes the mark of the beast, it's meant as a warning, like, don't take it. All right? It doesn't mean there's not exceptions. What do you mean there's not exceptions, Paul? Of course there's, what do you mean there's exceptions? What do you mean that doesn't mean there's not exceptions? That doesn't mean there's not. That means there is exceptions. How dare you say there is exceptions? The Bible says whoever takes the mark of the beast, what does it say? Whosoever, if any man worship the beast and take his mark in their forehead or his hand, the same shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels, in the presence of the Lamb. So that's just torment. You're going to be in the presence of Jesus and tormented. Okay, that still doesn't tell me anything about final judgment. It doesn't necessarily say like that they. It doesn't say that and then they will be summarily sent to hell or execution. I don't know, but it does sound not particularly good. I know that this argument is stretching things a bit. Okay, but either not everyone gets the mark of the beast, or just like Peter. When he denied the Lord said, whoever denies me before men, I will deny them before my Father and before his angels. So don't deny me. Right? That's what he said. Whoever denies me, I will deny. Whoever. Peter denied him 3 times. And Jesus forgave him. So don't tell me there are no exceptions. Don't tell me there are no exceptions. Don't tell me you know what you're talking about if you think that that's how you interpret the Bible. No. So you receive the mark of the beast. Most likely you're going to be tormented with fire and brimstone. But I'll tell you what. If you see one of God's servants hungry and you feed him. If you see one of God's servants thirsty and you give him drink. Jesus says, as much as you did this to the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me. And acts of kindness and love cover a multitude of sins, as well as, well, love. Love covers a multitude of sins, it says. And, and so what I'm saying is, I went out without this mask, and I realized not everyone is whole hog on this. And I guarantee it, for the mark of the beast, there are going to be people who took it, who didn't want to take it, who but felt pressured. There's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure to take it. There are going to be people who are very unhappy about having the mark of the beast. And there are going to be a number of them who are going to be wanting to help you out, wanting to do anything they can to, because they're going to be suspecting that they've sinned. They're going to, because here's the thing, not everybody, most people. But like I said, when I go in the store, I see people who are wearing masks who look at me, and or I've had my brother tell me, people will come up to him and say, I agree with you. Like I said, I get extra friendly. Some people, I don't know. It's funny. Before the pandemic, I was just a normal guy. Nobody paid attention to me. Now, it seems like half the people, the guys working there and the women too, they all seem, half of them seem to be extra happy to see me compared to before, and the other half seem like annoyed. So I know who's gung ho for the mark of the beast. Or as far as the mask of the beast, whatever, the mask of the beast. But it's like the mark of the beast. It is, because it was just because I was going in a store. My wife, here's the thing. I went to Goodwill. My wife, I let her go in, and pretty soon I saw the cops pull up, so I was like, I better go in, better go save her, right? Because she refuses to wear a mask. And she did actually at first, just like me. We both did. It was only after we realized that this was all, that they were never going to tell us to take off the mask. Like, Fauci's never going to say it's okay. There's always possibility of infection. There's always a risk. There's always a threat. Never leave it up to a doctor to assess the risk. You're talking about someone who never talk about risk to someone who has to buy multi-million dollars worth of malpractice insurance. Someone who's in a profession that has to insure themselves so heavily. They're obviously risk averse. So I don't want to bother with risk averse people. I don't have time for people who are afraid of risk. Doctors, like Dr. Fauci, he's risk averse. He needs to be fired like a year ago. That's the biggest, what the biggest failing of Donald Trump was? The pandemic. He let the doctors run all over him. I don't entirely blame him, because I know how to handle doctors. That's because in my family, we've had people lost due to medical errors, and we take control. Like when my wife was giving birth, the doctors tried to tell us, well, we got to do it like, I was like, no, we don't got to do it like you said. No, this is how we're going to do it. It's like, but blah, 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 blah. Every argument sounds like, well, we're going to turn her over now, and if you don't like it, we can turn her back. Meaning, or if there's a problem, we'll go do it. If there's a problem that comes up, we'll do it your way. We're doing it my way, though. Because you don't have to. This is a dirty secret. You don't have to listen to a doctor ever. Ever. You never have to do what they say. You have body autonomy. Abortion is legal in this country? Because it's your body, your choice. You don't have to allow anything into your body you don't want, and you can expel anything from it you don't want in it. Okay? They have no right to put a vaccine into you if you don't want one. No right. No right to. Any company that tries to require you also has no right to do that, and should be boycotted and destroyed. We should show them what happens when they try to do stuff like this. This is what I'd like to see from our people. Just like with the lockdowns, I would like to see massive disobedience, but all I saw was like, we'll do whatever you say. The science is whatever you say, sir. So when I see this, I say, hey, there could be people who are, meaning, let's say you give, Jesus is coming, and you've taken the mark of the beast, but the servants of God who they were being persecuted, and you saw them being let off to be killed, and you gave one water or you looked at him in the eyes and you smiled and let him know that you supported them. You know what I mean? There are all kinds of ways you can give someone a drink of water. Like I said, it's funny because I look at it that way. It's like sometimes when I don't like going places. I don't like being the center of, well, I don't like making a lot of noise in the store, or what. I don't like making a scene. That's what the word I want. I don't like making a scene. I don't like to stir things up. I don't want trouble. I just want to go into public and then get out of public and back to my place and do my business. I don't want all this trouble. You know what I mean? But there are people who will bring it, and it's here. But I'm saying, but when I get, when people, I'm like I said, I'm walking in and I see somebody and and they smile or show some indication that they're happy and somebody's fighting it. That's like a drink of water. It makes me feel good. It is because it can be really depressed. Like, I look forward to seeing other people without masks on. It's rare. I can go to the store and see nobody. I mean, when I say the store, I mean Walmart with hundreds of people there. I can go into one of those. I don't know what state everyone else lives in. But if you live in the People's Republic of Illinois, you walk into a store and generally everyone's wearing their mask. Because we mandate it and people are obedient. But not everybody. And I'll tell you what, every time I see someone without it, it's like a cold drink of water. Because it refreshes me to see that I'm not alone. I say I resist because it's easy for me. I don't know if it was a lot harder if I could. I don't know if I got it in me. But I thank God that He's made it this easy. Like I said, if you're ever in trouble, if you feel like you would, if like I had coronavirus, probably twice. So why would I ever worry about a vaccine or a mask again? But they will, whatever. And my point is, those current events have a lot to do with the prophecy, because those are the people I'm talking about. The people who give me the cold water. The people who smile because someone is fighting against evil. They may, when Jesus comes to slay the wicked, it may just be that the building doesn't fall on that person. It may just be that the 100-pound hailstone misses that guy who gave me the cold cup of water, who gave me the relief in the midst of the mark of the beast, who fed me when I was hungry, who clothed me when I was naked, who visited me when I was sick, whatever. There are certain things that people, if they do, in spite of doing something which is otherwise quite wicked, like denying the Lord, like taking the mark of the beast, which is a form of denying the Lord, and from which it is said that whoever takes it will be tormented with fire and brimstone. Even so, Jesus said, He won't be denying Peter in front of the angels. Not just if you were a literalist, if you're a true fundamentalist, He would have to do that just for show. So, okay, this is just for show, but I got to deny Peter because I said I would. Does He have to do that now? Can He just forgive and forget what He said? Can He forget the rules? Can God do that? I think He can. Yeah. He can just say, oh, okay, it doesn't count. Are you going back on your word? Are you telling a lie? No, it was always implicit. In everything there is implicitness of exceptions. Because God makes exceptions. The Bible's full of them. So, the idea is that these people who live and remain after Jesus returns would become the population of the world in this millennial kingdom. It took a long way to get around back to that, but that's what I was saying. That the millennial kingdom that is established on earth when Christ returns, who's going to populate it? Who are we going to reign over? We're going to live and reign with Christ 1,000 years. Over who? And there has to be somebody. You know why? Because after 1,000 years, Satan is loosed out of his prison. He goes out to deceive the nations, and he does, and they're numbered as the stars of heaven and the sands of the sea, or just as the sands of the sea, actually. They are as numerous as the sands of the sea, and they come to make war against the holy city at the end of the 1,000 years. You think, how's that possible? Well, because these people who remain will be normal people. They won't be changed and transformed into spiritual bodies like the believers will. They will be normal people. But they will live extraordinary long and healthy lives and be blessed during the millennium. And they will replenish and repopulate the earth, which will be ruled over by God's servants. They will replenish the earth. And then but the thing is, By the time the 1,000 years are finished, everyone who lived when Jesus returned, they're all going to live extraordinarily long lives. But they won't live 1,000 years. Nobody. Even a baby born on the first day of Jesus' return will not survive to the end. Because man never lived over 1,000 years, even in the ancient, antediluvian days. At least I suspect this, okay? The reason I suspect it is because a lot of times, like in Genesis, it says of Joseph, it says, or actually this is Exodus. A new Pharaoh rose up who knew not Joseph. He didn't know what had happened in the past. New Pharaoh rose up, didn't know Joseph. Right? And so he enslaved the Hebrews. Well, again, a new generation rises up who knew not the Lord returning. Because I also suspect that for that 1,000 years, Jesus will remain sequestered in Jerusalem and not go in public, not show himself, not do supernatural things and to demonstrate that he is God. Or even if he does, after 1,000 years. The funny thing is, you think if God was there, it would be different. If Jesus was reigning on the earth and his servants, if we were ruled by angels, they say if men were angels, they wouldn't need government. If we were ruled by angels, we would need no controls on government. Well, the earth will be ruled by angelic-like people who are righteous and under the command of the Lord Jesus. But what was the last thing I was going to say? Well, anyways, but that's it. That's the point, is that I believe the millennium will be populated by people who survive the tribulation, and that their descendants over that 1,000-year period, the first generation will die off, and those descendants will never have seen the events that took place that led to the millennial kingdom. They'll never have seen the destruction. They'll never have seen the Antichrist. They'll never have encountered Satan. And they will be the ones who will be ripe for deception at the end of the 1,000 years. That's why the armies of them will follow Satan. And it's astonishing, but that's the only way you can understand it. One, if they're a new generation that never saw that, and also that they're carnal, it makes sense. And also the other thing, that whatever. I'm just reiterating. We're done. This last verse. Oh, there's 3 verses? I thought I was going to go into chapter 5, but I'm out of time. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof, by the spirit of judgment, by the spirit of burning. Because the filth, it's the filth of their fornication. The world has been made drunk by the wine of the wrath of our fornication. Or I was thinking of today. I've always had trouble singing that line. I've been preparing to sing Revelation. And you made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of our fornication. That's such a bad line. I was thinking of changing it to, sing of the wrathful wine of our fornication. Drink of the wrathful wine. I think that's probably better English, maybe not a better translation. But it's the wine that has been made wrathful by the anger of God and because of her fornication. All right, so dwelling place. All right. When he shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion, and shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem by the spirit of judgment, because judgment, their blood can be purged through forgiveness, also purged through judgment, because it punishes the wicked, and the burning cleanses. That's why when Mystery Babylon comes, right, she has a cup that's filled with the filthiness of the abominations of her fornication. There's this idea of filth, and it has to do with the sex we were talking about. Hold on a second. It's in a low blood sugar moment. That's not sugar. I should have had a banana. I think I'm just going to be done. It just hit me all of a sudden, super tired. I can't go on. I can't think. We'll pick up right here around verse 5 on Monday. We're going to conclude this study. I don't feel well suddenly. Thanks for joining me. I'll be fine. I'm just, I need to eat something, I think. I'm just feeling lightheaded. Thanks for joining us today. We'll be back again on Monday to continue. Thanks. And I better get off before I start talking. I don't feel well. All right. Monday.
In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely for those that escape of Israel. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion, and he that remains in Jerusalem, shall be called holy, even